There is a number the Australian car industry does not want you to hear. In the first 5 months of 2026, large SUV sales fell more than 11%. Premium large SUVs, the ones above $80,000, fell 13%. And right now, across showroom floors in every state, 8 specific SUV models are being quietly walked out the door. Discounted, discontinued, or simply abandoned, while the dealers selling them act like everything is business as usual. This is not a sale event. It is not a seasonal clearance. What is happening to these 8 models is the result of a structural shift in the Australian car market. A shift that has been accelerating for 3 years and that most buyers are not being told about at the point of sale. We are counting down from 8 to 1. Number 1 will change how you think about the Australian SUV market entirely. There is no paid promotion in this video. Every figure comes from VFACTS data, manufacturer announcements, and industry reporting. It is not what the showroom wants you to know. The era you think you're still in is already over. For the better part of a decade, the SUV was untouchable in Australia. Families bought them. Professionals bought them. Weekend adventurers bought them. In 2025, Australians purchased nearly 734,000 new SUVs, more than 60% of the entire new car market, and the segment kept growing. That was the peak, because what the numbers buried underneath those headlines showed was something different. Chinese brands were arriving. Prices were being undercut by $20,000, $30,000, sometimes $40,000. A cost of living squeeze was tightening, and the buyers who had once paid over the odds, who had once joined waiting lists, were starting to stop and ask, is this still worth it? By mid-2026, the answer from the market was clearly no. Not for all SUVs. But for these 8, the answer came down harder and faster than anyone in those showrooms is telling you. Before we get into it, hit subscribe and smash the like button every week on Australian vehicles. We take the Australian car market apart, and this one matters. Let's start at number 8. Number 8 is the Suzuki S-Cross. You may not have given this one much thought. That is part of the story. The S-Cross was Suzuki's attempt to hold a position in Australia's most competitive segment, the compact SUV space, where Kia, Hyundai, and Mazda fight for volume every single month. It offered a 1.4-liter turbocharged engine, Suzuki's all-grip all-wheel drive system, and a price point that sat well below most of its rivals. On paper, it was practical, affordable, and sensibly equipped. In early 2025, production orders for the S-Cross were stopped entirely. The reason was ADR 9800, the same autonomous emergency braking regulation that took out the Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, the Pajero Sport, and several Suzuki stablemates simultaneously. The S-Cross, Vitara, Ignis, and Swift Sport all fell at the same regulatory hurdle. What remained was dealer stock, and dealers were told to sell it down. In some states, distributors have confirmed that once that stock is gone, there are no plans to bring the S-Cross back. Here is what that regulation story conceals. The S-Cross was already aging before ADR 9800 arrived. Suzuki, Australia's own managing director, described the affected models as being at the end of their life cycle, which was always part of their product planning. The regulation gave the brand a clean reason to exit models that were struggling regardless. The remaining stock is being sold in a market that has already moved on. No successor has been confirmed for Australia. That is not a clearance sale. That is an exit with better optics. If you are looking at S-Cross stock today, the price will reflect urgency on the dealer's side. What it will not reflect is parts, availability, software support, or resale in a market where this vehicle is no longer being manufactured or imported. That is the full equation. Number 7 is the Ford Everest. This one will surprise people, because the Everest is not failing. It is Australia's best-selling large SUV. Everest sales reached 11,133 to the end of June 2026, ahead of the rival Toyota Land Cruiser, Prado, and Isuzu MU-X. So why is it on this list? Because the discounting tells a different story than the sales rank. Ford Australia launched what it called a triple stack deal, a $3,000 purchase discount, 5 free services, and a $3,000 finance benefit on selected Everest models. That is up to $6,000 in combined incentives on a vehicle that was, until recently, selling without needing to try. Ford had also offered a $4,000 fuel card on current model Everests, and separately a $5,000 fuel card on run-out stock, before consolidating everything into the new package. Here is the structural problem the Everest reveals. A vehicle that leads its segment and is still being discounted at this level is responding to pressure. Pressure from Chinese alternatives entering the large SUV space at significantly lower price points, pressure from a softening market, and pressure from buyers who now have more negotiating room than they have had in years. 8 new nameplates entered the under $80,000 large SUV category in 2026 alone, including the BYD Celion 8, Chery Tiggo 9, and Omoda 9 models that did not exist in this segment 12 months ago. The Everest is a good vehicle in a segment that is being repriced around it. The discount you can access today is real, and the reason it exists is that Ford knows the competitive environment has fundamentally changed. You have leverage on the Everest that buyers in 2024 did not have. Use it. Number 6 is the Volvo C40. Volvo is not a brand Australians associate with failure. It is a brand associated with safety, Scandinavian design, and quiet confidence. The C40 was supposed to be its electric statement, a coupe-style SUV that brought premium EV credentials to the compact segment and competed directly with the BMW iX2 and Audi Q4 e-tron. The technology was real. The design was distinctive. The brand had the heritage to back it. Only 560 examples of the C40 Recharge were sold in Australia in 2024. For context, 3,142 examples of the XC40, including petrol and electric variants, were sold over the same period, and 2,129 examples of the newly introduced EX, 30 small electric SUV. The C40, despite being Volvo's flagship electric SUV, was its slowest seller by a significant margin. It was discontinued in March 2025, though the mechanically similar XC40 Recharge lives on in Australia under the EX40 name. Volvo did not replace the C40, it replaced the name. Here is the structural problem the C40 reveals. In a rapidly expanding EV market, style alone does not protect a product. The C40's lower roofline compromised rear headroom and cargo flexibility. Chinese alternatives arrived at lower price points with comparable or superior range, and Volvo's own lineup expanded in ways that cannibalized the C40's natural audience, the EX30 from below, the EX90 from above. The C40 was squeezed out of its own brand's range before the market could squeeze it out of the broader segment. The remaining stock exists. Some dealers still have examples. The price on those examples is more favorable than it has ever been. What you are also buying is a discontinued nameplate, a resale market that will now compete against its own successor badge, and the quiet reality that Volvo itself has moved on from this product. That context belongs in every conversation about the deal. Number 5 is the Toyota Fortuner. This one lands differently because of the badge. Toyota does not discontinue things quietly in Australia. It has led this market for 23 consecutive years. When Toyota confirms a model is leaving without a replacement, it is worth stopping to understand what that decision actually reflects. Toyota confirmed the Fortuner will be discontinued by mid-2026, concluding 11 years of production for the Hilux-based 7-seater, with no plans for a replacement. The sales data behind that decision is precise. Between January and the end of October 2025, the Fortuner sold 2,928 units against the Ford Everest's 21,915, the Isuzu MU-X's 12,499, and the Toyota Land Cruiser Prado's 23,298. The Fortuner was being outsold by the Prado, a vehicle that costs significantly more by a factor of 8. Even when Prado supply dried up during its model transition, Fortuner sales did not increase. Buyers waited for the Prado rather than stepping down to the Fortuner. Here is the structural problem the Fortuner reveals. It occupied a position that compressed from both sides simultaneously. Below it, The Hilux offered comparable off-road capability with more body style flexibility. Above it, the Prado offered the prestige, the resale, and the badge that buyers in this segment were actually willing to pay for. The Fortuner was boxed in by its own niche. For many shoppers, it sat too close to the Hilux, yet too far from the Prado's comfort. That is a position no amount of discounting can fix, because the problem is not price. It is where the vehicle sits in the buyer's mind. Toyota will no longer offer a body-on-frame 7-seat SUV below the Prado once the Fortuner exits, removing the brand's most affordable diesel off-roader from its Australian lineup entirely. The buyers who take the final Fortuner stock at a discount are buying a vehicle whose manufacturer has already directed its audience elsewhere. That is a fact worth holding before you hold the keys. Quick pause, we're halfway through this list, and the next 4 are the ones that actually change how you negotiate. If you're not already subscribed to Australian vehicles, now's the time, because number 1 is the story nobody else in this market is telling you. Number 4 is the Land Rover Discovery. This entry belongs to a specific category of product. The vehicle that is genuinely excellent, has a long and respected history, and is nonetheless in a decline it cannot seem to arrest. The Discovery has been a fixture in the Australian large SUV market for decades. 7 seats, genuine off-road capability, a premium cabin that justified the premium price. In January 2026, it sold 31 units in Australia, 31 against the Toyota Land Cruiser's 907 in the same month. The decline is not Australian specific. Jaguar Land Rover's global CEO has publicly confirmed the brand needs to take drastic action to address the Discovery's trajectory. The Defender's success, a vehicle that arrived in 2020 and quickly became Land Rover's dominant local seller, has cannibalized the Discovery's natural audience. The buyer, who once chose the Discovery for its blend of practicality and prestige, now has a more desirable option wearing the same badge. Here is the specific financial warning that applies. The Discovery you buy today at a discount retains value based on the assumption that future buyers will want it. When a model is in sustained, multi-year decline, and when the manufacturer has announced it is reconsidering the model's direction entirely, future buyers have fewer reasons to prioritize it. The discount today and the resale tomorrow are part of the same equation. You do not get to separate them. Number 3 is the Volkswagen Touareg. A decade ago, Volkswagen sold more than 60,000 vehicles a year in Australia. In 2025, that number was 28,970. The decline that produced that figure is not an accident, and it is not explained by one bad model or one bad year. Volkswagen has declined 16.8% in 2024 and 20.6% in 2025. It has been in sustained retreat from this market for years. The Touareg sits at the premium end of that retreat. The Touareg was never a volume vehicle in Australia. It competed in a segment where German prestige, technology, and refinement were supposed to justify prices approaching or exceeding 6 figures. The problem is that the brand propping up those prices is losing ground in Australia simultaneously. A Touareg wearing the Volkswagen badge in 2026 carries less brand prestige in this market than a Touareg wearing that badge did 5 years ago because the brand has spent 5 years declining. The competitors it faces have not declined at the same rate. The BMW X5 fell 4.5% to May 2026. It is a smaller fall from a stronger position. The Touareg discount you can access today reflects both of those realities at once. The model is real, the discount is real, and the reason both exist is something a dealer is unlikely to walk you through voluntarily. Number 2 is the Jeep Grand Cherokee. This is the most instructive case study of an iconic Australian nameplate in freefall. In 2014, the Grand Cherokee outsold the Toyota Prado. It was Australia's best-selling large SUV. That year, 16,582 Grand Cherokees were delivered across the country. By 2024, the number had fallen to 645. By 2025, it was axed entirely. Jeep described the withdrawal as a pause. The reality is that right-hand drive production of the current generation has ended, and the replacement for Australia has not been confirmed. The final chapter of the Grand Cherokee's Australian life involved a price cut of more than $22,000. Remaining stock was offered at $60,000 drive away, down from over $72,000. A price cut of that magnitude on a flagship product is not a gesture of goodwill. It is inventory liquidation. And the buyers who took that deal genuinely good value on paper now own a vehicle whose manufacturer has exited its segment, whose brand is at its lowest point in nearly 3 decades, and whose parts and service ecosystem will shift as Stellantis directs resources toward the new electric models it has announced for 2026. What the Grand Cherokee tells you is that a famous badge and a famous nameplate are not the same thing as a secure purchase. The name can mean everything in a showroom and mean something different on the road 2 years later. And that brings us to number 1. Number 1 is the Toyota Land Cruiser Prado. And before you push back, this needs to be heard clearly. The Prado is not a failing vehicle. It is one of the greatest large SUVs ever made. The new generation model, launched in late 2024, is better in every meaningful way than the model it replaced. More refined, more capable, more efficient. Nobody is arguing otherwise. But here is what the sales data says. In the first 5 months of 2026, Land Cruiser Prado sales fell 45% compared to the same period in 2025. Down nearly half on a brand new model from the brand that has led the Australian market for 23 consecutive years. And the Prado sits at number 1 on this list, not because of what it is, but because of what that number reveals. Because the Prado was the vehicle that dealers were charging above sticker markups on. The Prado was the vehicle with the waiting list. The Prado was the vehicle that buyers were being told they had no leverage on. And now, with inventory normalized and demand softening, those same dealers are competing for buyers rather than the other way around. That is a complete reversal of the negotiating position. And the buyers who paid above RRP in 2024 and 2025, who were told the premium was justified by demand, they are now watching that premium disappear in real time, which affects the resale position of every vehicle bought at the top of that cycle. The Prado is the number 1 entry on this list because it is the most visible proof that the SUV market has shifted from a seller's market to a buyer's market. If you are in the market for one right now, the terms available today are fundamentally different from 12 months ago. You have leverage you were told you did not have. And understanding where that leverage comes from and why dealers now need to compete for you is worth more than any accessory package they are going to offer. So, what ties these 8 together? 3 things. The first is competition. This is not the Australian car market of 2020. In 2026, Chinese brands represent 7 of the top 20 selling brands in this country. Models that built their case when the field was smaller are now competing in a fundamentally different environment. Price points that were once defensible are no longer defensible, and every brand on this list is feeling that pressure in their sales data. The second is positioning drift. Every vehicle on this list occupies a space that has been compressed either by Chinese alternatives below, European, or Japanese alternatives above, or by better products within the same brand cannibalizing the audience. A product can be excellent and still be in the wrong position. The Discovery losing buyers to the Defender. The Prado losing buyers to the Land Cruiser. 300. The C40 losing buyers to the EX30 and EX90. The Fortuner losing buyers to the Hilux and the Prado above it. Position drift is a real phenomenon, and it travels with the car after you buy it. The third is the question no one in the showroom will answer voluntarily. Every deal on every one of these vehicles exists for a reason. The reason is not a coincidence, not a promotion, and not a gesture. It is a signal. And the buyers who understand what the signal means are the buyers who walk out with the right outcome. 3 things to take forward. If you are in the market right now, research the resale trajectory of any vehicle you are seriously considering before you research the specification sheet. The drive-away price is not the cost. The cost is the difference between what you pay and what you recover. If you own one of these vehicles, monitor the secondary market. Not every model here is a financial disaster, but knowing where your vehicle sits is the difference between being reactive and being informed. And if you are sitting in a showroom and you want to know your real negotiating position, ask the salesperson one question. How many of this model have you delivered in the last 3 months? The answer will tell you everything the spec sheet will not. This market has changed. The buyers who know that walk in differently. Subscribe to Australian Vehicles every week. We take this market apart so you walk into any dealership in Australia knowing exactly what you are dealing with. Drop a comment below. Which of these 8 surprised you the most?